I made 7 days of homemade dog food in under 30 minutes for less than $15. And yes, it's fully balanced and designed by me, a veterinarian and food therapist. In this video, I'm showing how I make this one-pot budget-friendly recipe, and at the end, I'll share a few ways to customize this recipe even further. So here's everything I'm using today. I have chicken livers, chicken gizzards, ground turkey, eggs, sardines, organic kale, organic brown rice, freeze-dried beef liver, and then for supplements, I'm using this meal completer, kelp granules, and Pets fish oil. But at the end of the video, I'm gonna show you an alternative way that you can balance out this recipe for those of you who want to avoid the meal completer and opt for more whole food sources and individual supplements to fill in the nutrient gaps. I intentionally made the first version very simple because fewer ingredients makes it easier to balance the recipe, it makes it less expensive, and a lot easier to prep when you're on a busy schedule. I'm gonna be cooking this one-pot recipe in my Instant Pot, but you can also use a slow cooker or a Dutch oven. I'm starting with 85% lean ground turkey and chicken gizzards as the primary protein sources. These are both super affordable and very nutrient dense. Sometimes I will use a leaner cut of turkey, like 93% lean or even 99% lean, depending on the overall recipe. But for this one, 85% lean gives me a nice balance of protein and fat without pushing the calories or the fat content too high. I'm also adding eggs, which provide additional protein, but more importantly, they're gonna help supply nutrients like vitamin D and choline. For organ meat, I am using chicken liver. It's extremely nutrient dense and it helps supply things like iron, vitamin A, and folate. And for carbohydrates, I'm using brown rice. There's a lot of debate about giving dogs carbohydrates, and usually rice in particular is the one that's questioned, but rice is perfectly safe for dogs when fed in moderation, and I specifically chose it for this recipe because it's economical, it's really easy to prep, and brown rice in particular provides fiber, which is great for the gut microbiome and can help stabilize blood sugar levels. I'm also adding a 1.5 cups of water. So I'm gonna let that cook for about 12 minutes, and while that's going, let's talk about what else we need to fully balance out this recipe. A lot of recipes you find online probably stop at this point and don't really add a whole lot of extra ingredients in, but if we did stop at this point, the recipe would be deficient in 8 essential nutrients. And those include calcium, potassium, chloride, copper, zinc, iodine, vitamin E, and vitamin B1. And it is also very low in omega-3s, so we want to use our supplements to help enrich those levels as well. Long-term feeding of a diet with these gaps can lead to all sorts of health issues down the line, like poor bone health, skin and coat problems, muscle weakness, and metabolic imbalances, just to name a few. But the kicker is that nutrition-related illnesses often do not show up right away. Think about people and how many people eat absolutely terrible. They do not eat balanced diets in a lot of cases, but they seem fine for a while, right? It's not until they're in their senior years where things start to show up and manifest, and all of the years of poor diet start to catch up with them. So it's kind of similar in our pets, where they can go weeks, months, or potentially years without showing any sort of clinical signs from a poor diet, but eventually it catches up and we will start seeing disease down the line. So it is crucial that we continue to balance out this recipe and fill in those nutrient gaps. So one thing I'm gonna add is kale. Now you could actually put this in the Instant Pot and cook it if you wanted to, but I generally just give it to my dog raw. She doesn't have any issues with it, and that helps preserve some of the nutrients as well. But again, you can either put this in the Instant Pot or just lightly steam it if you wanna help kind of facilitate digestion a little bit. To fill in the copper deficiency, I'm gonna use freeze-dried beef liver. I'm also using kelp granules. This will finish filling in the potassium deficiency and will provide iodine. I'm also adding sardines. So these are gonna boost our omega-3 content. They'll also provide some more vitamin D as well as chloride. And then we still need to provide a source of calcium, zinc, and vitamin B1. So I'm gonna do that in the easiest, most efficient way by using a meal completer. Now this is not a multivitamin. They are different. So if you omit this and you try to use a standard multivitamin to balance this recipe out, it's likely going to still be deficient in these nutrients. And that's because meal completers are much more concentrated, especially when it comes to calcium, which is often the most severe nutrient deficiency in homemade pet food. And then last but not least, I am adding a concentrated source of fish oil. Yes, we already have sardines in the recipe to supply some omega-3s, but it's really hard to get the optimal levels of omega-3s from sardines alone. So I'm gonna use this concentrated source of fish oil, which will not only supply our omega-3s, but it will also help to balance out the omega fatty acid ratio to a more anti-inflammatory level. This can be especially helpful for dogs that have skin and joint issues, but omega-3s are amazing for so many areas of health, including brain and heart function. And this is where individual needs really start to matter, because what works best for my dog might not work best for your dog. You might want to change some of these ingredients ingredients. You might want to enrich certain nutrients for your pet's needs. And then even based on their life stage, if you have a puppy, not appropriate for them. This is for adult dogs only. If you have an adult or a senior dog, their needs are going to differ as well because they're in different life stages. So there's lots of different ways that recipes can be customized and tailored to your dog. And the other thing I like to mention is diet rotation. I'm a big fan of rotating through different recipes and not feeding the same thing long term, not because any individual ingredient is bad, but because rotation supports nutrient variability and it helps expose your pet's gut microbiome to different fibers and food sources. That said, rotation should be intentional. You can't just swap ingredients out in this recipe and hope everything balances out. You have to use a balanced recipe every single time. Learning how to customize and rotate recipes safely is something I go much deeper into in my mini course, but for now I wanted to show you what a solid foundational framework of homemade pet food looks like. So once everything is cooled, cooked, and all of the ingredients are added, I blend everything together using a food processor, and I portion out her meals into glass containers. The number of meal prep containers that you're going to need obviously depends on the size of your dog. For my dog, each of these large glass containers fits about 4 days of food. And definitely make sure that you're not storing more than 4 days of food in the fridge because this doesn't contain any preservatives and it can absolutely go bad and then your dog can get foodborne illness and we don't want that. So make sure that you freeze anything beyond 4 days. And batch cooking like this is what makes homemade pet food so sustainable. You do not have to cook every single day, every single meal. You can absolutely do 7 days worth of food. Sometimes I'll even do 14 or 21 days if I need a break. So you can kind of do whatever works best for your schedule, but I know most of us don't want to be in the kitchen every day, and that's why batching is amazing. If you do want to try out this recipe as is for your dog, I put the exact amounts of each ingredient, links to the supplements, and a few other really important notes in the description. But as promised, I'm going to talk to you about another way you can balance this out if you want to avoid the meal completer. So if we remove the meal completer, we need a calcium source. Super easy way to fulfill that is through eggshell powder. We also need a source of zinc. Zinc is a bit difficult to find in Whole Foods. You can get it from oysters, but not a lot of people want to add those to their pet food. So easily just use a zinc supplement. And then to help boost the B vitamins and fulfill the B1 deficiency, a really easy food to use is nutritional yeast that's enriched with B vitamins. I don't have any on hand, otherwise I'd show you, but I did link that in the description as well. And then one other thing I would add is vitamin E. And this is really important to use because it is an antioxidant. So it will actually help to preserve the food a little bit. It will also help to preserve the fish oil, especially if you add it directly to the batch of food. You have to have enough vitamin E in here to ensure that that fish oil is not going to oxidize. I actually don't personally add the fish oil to the batches. I add it directly to her meals, so it's super fresh every single day, but it doesn't hurt to add additional vitamin E and enrich this with more antioxidants. So that's just an alternative way to balance this out. If you don't want to use the meal completer, which way you do it is totally up to you, but please do make sure you follow the instructions and amounts, which are all listed in the description. If this video made homemade dog food feel more approachable, but you're realizing how much nuance there is, then a good next step might be my mini course, The Ultimate Guide to Homemade Pet Food. I walk you through the entire recipe building process so you can use the ingredients and supplements you prefer, and it also includes 12 sample recipes to help get you started. If that sounds helpful for you, I've linked it in the description along with a code for 50% off. And if you found this video helpful, liking and subscribing is the easiest way to support my channel. See you guys next time.